Established in 2020, the Author's Porch is a space for authors to share their literary works of art. Founded by CJ Ives Lopez, the Author's Porch puts authors first and becomes a premier destination for all at every level in their careers. When you join the Author's Porch, we want you to think of us as a beacon of light, bringing you home to a porch where your family is waiting to usher you into your greatness. From live cast to podcast, blog posts, and most recently, the magazine, the Author's Porch brings promotional services and advice to authors to get their writing published. Whatever the issue, the Author's Porch connects writers with a service desire to create their dreams into reality. Hey everybody, welcome to the Author's Porch, where every great conversation happens, and it happens because we trusted Brendan and Vamsi at Master Talk to show us the power of effective communication. We also make sure we have a great cup of coffee from Third Day Coffee Seguin, a Christ-centered, veteran-owned coffee company. Today on the show, we have Vince Bellitto. Did I say it right, Vince?
You did, exactly.
Okay, good, because, I was like, oh, I forgot to ask him to enunciate it for me. I'm horrible with my words, and I know the value of a name. That is an identity, and I always correct people. I'm like, no, I want to be called CJ because I chose my name after I reinvented myself. So I know the value of a name. So guys, let me give you a little introduction on Vince. He is a trauma-informed coach that helps you create radical shifts in communication, optimize performance, and achieve self-realization by empowering you to access and transform the conflicting forces in mind, emotion, and body. He uses cutting-edge science tools and processes called inner coaching, which gives you direct access to and the ability to alter subconscious conditions and the root causes of lack, limitation, fear, failure, and suffering. That just sounds like when I read all of that, I was like, okay, where do I sign up?
Yeah, me too. I was like, give me some of that.
Yeah. So guys, I met Vince at our international event that we had on humanity. And when Vince started talking about his story, I was just struck. Like I said, and I reached out after the conference, and I was like, Vince, dude, have you wrote a book? Because if not, you need to. But he told me, he was like, yes, I've wrote a book. I said, okay, you need to come on the show because people need to hear more of Vince. Vince needs, and I'm sure obviously you're all over the place, but I was like, I want my audience to hear you too. Like I was over here like, come over here, come over here.
That's awesome.
So how are you doing tonight?
I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you and what you're up to as I started learning more about what you're doing. I think it's beautiful in the platform you're providing for upcoming authors, existing authors. I think it's just really awesome that you're really committed to helping others and sharing and expanding and spreading, just people who are really up to something big for humanity and for the world. So I love that. I think it's really awesome. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Thanks for being here. And I took a look at your book and I love the title, because so many people are seeking, what am I here for? What the title of your book, I Know My Purpose. Like, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Can you tell us some more? Like, how did you come up with that title of all titles? Because everybody is asking that.
That's so good. I was wondering what you were going to ask me. We didn't even talk about this, but I was like, I hope she asked me how I came up with the title. Because it's a really cool story. I can't remember who I was observing, but I was watching a video of a gentleman, I believe he was Russian, and he was talking about a particular meditation practice where you would use earplugs and focus in on the ringing in your ears as you're meditating. And I was like, that's unusual. I've been meditating since 2001. So I've got years of practice of all kinds of meditative practices, but I never heard anything like this. So I decided to try it out. And I noticed that as I concentrated on the ringing in my ears, that I could hear that was there, and just focusing on that and relaxing, I got really attuned to my breath. Then I got really attuned to my heartbeat. And all of a sudden it was like I heard the words, I know my purpose. And it was like a voice in me. And it was just speaking to the impulse of life that was the source of why my heartbeat does what my heartbeat does. And it was this realization of how gracious life is, that life's already here. Life's already doing its thing. And I'm a recipient in this body of it, a participant of it, a receiver, really. And as I became aware of that, I was like, wow, my purpose is to participate with this, to stay in its flow. And it really starts at the center of the heart. And I also, at that same time, came up with my flagship program named The Core Encounter. And it's just become my mission to lead people to access that very essence and source of being itself, the real and true self that really I found to be the most central axis of our existence at the core. And so now my program, The Core Encounter, is my big thing. The next book that I'll be putting out will be The Core Encounter, and it's going to be revealing the 3 parts of our program: Core Connection, which is about self-connection, clearing the denied, unwanted, shamed parts of the psychology and emotional nature and somatic nature as well. And then Core Communication, which is about relationships and how to establish better relationships, repair relationships, enrich relationships. Core Creation is the last part of the Core Encounter, and that is all about clearing the obstacles to achieving your goals and dreams by doing this inner coaching that I call it, right? Really removing the mental, emotional obstacles, and with a very exact scientific type of precision. It's like a no fluff. I've done a lot of things over the years, but it's just really laser focused, very quick, also extremely gentle. And that's really everything that I'm up to here. So that I know my purpose title was born out of that awareness of the heart impulse. And I got tuned to life within me. And I'm like, I just need to stay in touch with this. That is my purpose, to follow its guidance, its flow through my life.
That's beautiful because, you know, I have a lot of ringing in my ears, and I always fight against it because I get this deafening, and it's tinnitus or whatever I don't even know the name of it.
That's it.
I get it. Okay, good. Because I'm like, it's not the elbow stuff. I'm a goofball. Just so you know, I'm going to say things you're going to be like, oh my God, this woman is nuts.
No,
But
it's
I always
actually
get
cute.
mixed. I get mixed up with the stuff in my elbow, and I'm like, okay, which one is it? So I always fight against the ringing in my ears because first it comes with this deafening sound, like I feel like I'm underwater, and then the ringing becomes so bad that it makes everything around me just kind of go away. So maybe if I leaned into it, I could
Mm,
feel more the stuff that's happening around me. And I think a lot of people don't try to find out the core of who they are.
mm,
Now, you said a little bit in the international humanity dialogue that we had with Vicky and the international community that you had to go through this huge transformation to learn more about your core, to learn more about who you were, what you wanted
yeah.
in your life. And I think that that was beautiful because a lot of people look at those who are successful and go, oh, sure, it's easy for you because you're successful, you know, and they just automatically assume or judge that a successful person has never been through anything in their life.
Yeah.
But the thing is everybody goes through something, right? We all go through something in our life that leads us to where we are. And would you like to kind of let people know a little bit about your journey that helped you get to
Mm.
that place where you were able to find your purpose?
Definitely. I will. And before I step into that, I just want to circle back to what you were saying about leaning into the ringing of your ears and like
Mhm.
what a difference that can make, because that's a very key principle of my work. I lead people gently to face, feel, and release so they can heal whatever has been going on internally. The real source of all of our suffering ultimately is that we are resisting something in our internal experience or something in our perceived external experience. That resistance is our lack of ownership, responsibility, and therefore lack of power over or with that. And so by turning towards things, we take ownership of them. We become the cause and the creator, the space, the container, versus being the effect or something in submission to something out there. It's a really simple principle, but in practice, well, it's also in practice, it's easy to do with my type of work. But in a regular, ordinary human's life, they're already hardwired to resist so many different things. It's a pattern of being and acting that's just regularly conditioned into all of us, and believed to be the way to deal with stuff. So I'm appreciating that you brought that up, and I'll circle back around to some more of this because it's really key. But yeah, and the, just that kind of segues right into like how I got to where I am. It's really, I like to start, there's many ways I could tell my story, but I'd like to start in 1999. I was waking up on the sidewalk. I started puking blood. I had no idea who I was, what I was, where I was, what was in front of me. My mind was not working. I was witnessing things almost, I guess, as like a pure observer. And then I could see my brain coming back together. And there were paramedics in front of me, my friends who I was with. And what had apparently happened is I had overdosed on a mixture of drugs, but a lot of cocaine. And I had been doing this for quite some time. But we were only 2 days up, no sleep, not that bad. I was doing 4 days pretty regularly, no sleep, cocaine, ecstasy, LSD, pills, drinking, smoking weed. I mean, it was all we just, as much as we could, a little bit of everything. And it finally caught up with me, I guess. And that was a little shocking. I was told that I had no heartbeat, apparently. I was driving my car 1 minute. I blacked out. I woke up on the sidewalk, as I just shared. And apparently my friend had pulled the car over because we were turning an intersection, and dragged me out of the car. And some lady stopped, checked my pulse, had no pulse. And then he proceeded to give me CPR until the medics came. And apparently I came back. So here I am, alive, and I was in the hospital. It was a violation of my probation. I was handcuffed to the bed, and it really gave me some time to think. I've been in the hospital many times already for drug issues, violent fights, almost dead multiple times, many times over in my life. But this one was really severe. I really got that. I kind of knew things weren't working. I had been arrested in June of 98, with 2 felony charges with possession of marijuana and cocaine with intent to distribute. And I just knew things had to shift. My dream at that time was to be a career criminal, drug dealer, mafia kingpin. And I was well on my way. And the problem was I had a drug problem that was really severe too. And looking back, I see why. But in that hospital, I decided that I needed to change or I won't live very long. And I did pretty quickly. I made a powerful decision. I did cocaine 3 more times after that. And each time I did it, it progressively was worse and worse. Like, it no longer produced pleasure for me. So I'm really lucky that it became so sickening every time I used it that I just had to give it up. There was those temptations, but I pretty much walked away from the hard drugs, smoked some weed and drank alcohol, but eventually gave that up found a practice of meditation. That's what got me into my inner world. That, as I got off the drugs, got sober, my mind started to clean up a little bit. I started to reconnect with me. The meditation was very intimate, and memories began to surface of what was, my mother getting very abused from the age of 10 years old. And that first memory that showed up was kind of shocking. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. I had shut that stuff out. And of course, the drugs and the crime, I realized, was really my strategy for getting away from all of that and trying to survive in the world. But I was running from myself. And I realized that I decided when I first witnessed my mother beaten so badly, her nose was flat on her face, completely shattered. Her eyes were blackened so severely, they stayed permanently black for the rest of her life.
Wow.
That was just that very first incident. This continued for 8 or so years with her and the man she would marry, actually, after this incident, which was crazy. But I decided that I was not good, that I was ashamed because I couldn't help my mom. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't powerful enough. And that shame, I didn't want anybody to know. I already at 10 years old felt and believed I should be a tough guy. I was already in martial arts. I had already been in a certain number of fights, and I kind of had my real dad was a tough guy and real strong leader. So I was comparing myself to this even at 10 years old. And when this guy showed up and beat my mom so badly and I couldn't do anything about it, and I was terrified to do anything about it, I felt deeply ashamed. I compared myself with them, thinking I should be bigger, stronger, better, and I wasn't. And so that was like a death sentence I cast on myself. And trying to hide that got me involved with gangs, more violence, all trying to compensate for this deep sense of inadequacy that I felt in that moment. And of course, I didn't know this, but that's what, looking back through this core encounter with myself, right, just discovering what really was going on, what was running me. And I knew that I needed to figure this out. Even in the hospital that day, handcuffed to the bed, I was like, I need to figure out how I got this way, and I need to turn this around, because something about my mind always understood there were cause-effect relationships. Like, things don't just happen by accident. So, and I've been very inquisitive, kind of scientifically oriented. And so I began my journey and started reading things about spirituality and different stuff like that. But being rather scientifically oriented and just wanting to know for myself by direct experience, I just didn't believe anything. I would read stuff, and if it didn't make sense, I would kind of shelf it. I wouldn't outright reject things, but I was like, I'll shelf it, and like finding things I could test. And eventually I found a direct experience where I had a profound revelation of who I really am. The light just opened up inside of me. I got the center of existence was right here, right now. And everybody in all the universe was really this beautiful central component of consciousness. And it's hard to explain in ordinary human terms. It was very profound, but at the same time, the simplest and most sensible thing that I had ever encountered. And it was an encounter. It was an encounter with my core. It was an encounter with my true self. You can call it God or you could call it whatever, but it was the real deal. And it was the most real experience I'd ever known. And even knowing immortality, but not the kind of immortality most people think of, like in the body or living in heaven with all your ancestors. It was a very different experience that it doesn't meet most people's expectations, especially religious people's. It was more profound than all those stories. It was better than all of those things. It was this solidity of pure existence that you cannot compartmentalize in ordinary anthropomorphic terms. You know, it just doesn't make sense. So that's part of my journey. There's so much more to say, but I'll pause there and take a sip of my water.
No, I get it. I totally get it, especially when you have done the work, you've done the inside work, you have actually paid attention to every ounce of your being, because I understand that. Me and my sister went through a tumultuous upbringing, and she turned to drugs and I turned to the military.
Wow.
Two totally separate,
Yep.
but I had her to look at and see what was happening in her life, to know that that's not what I wanted. Had I not had her, I would have probably went down that path. So I was blessed to have that. And then, going through domestic violence myself, I had to do what you did, that core work, and find myself and do different things. So I find it a beautiful journey when you have nothing but pure silence around you, where you can take the moments or force those moments to happen so that you can pay attention to the inside. I call it the inside, and I agree with you that the core of who you are, the core of existence itself, some people call it God, some people call it something else, the source, whatever it is, but it's all the same thing. We just look at it differently. I'm a spiritual person, I'm a faithful person, I'm not a religious person, but I think everyone has to find what they believe in so that they can have something that is so important to them that they know without a shadow of a doubt that this isn't it. That when the lights go out in this body, it doesn't mean that the lights go out for good, right? So, can you talk a little more about some of the work? You said meditation. I've tried that, and it's the most relaxing thing in the world. And I didn't do very well at it because my mind has squirrel moments, and I ended up with, the ADD was like, "Ooh, well, you should do this. Put that on a piece of paper before you forget." And I had to open my eye and put it on a piece of paper and then close my eyes again. So, what would you say to somebody like myself who doesn't know how to shut your brain off for 2 seconds, to help do some of that core work?
Wow. That's a great question. And really honor your story as well, and some of where you come from, and interesting that you chose the military and your sister chose the drugs. Very interesting difference, and definitely want to learn more about that later on. But I'll answer what you're saying. Meditation can go a couple different ways. What I found out, I've only really been looking into more of the research around this, but meditation actually can be very detrimental to some people. A certain percentage of people are not really going to benefit from meditation. It could actually be harmful because of the resurfacing of traumatic experiences and events. And yeah, and it makes perfect sense to me because that was my experience 20 years ago. Now I survived it. I made my way through it, but it wasn't very, it wasn't very, it was tumultuous. I had no skills really at that time. I just kind of would say like by luck, I mean, when the trauma surfaced, it was so violent for me. So what happens when we meditate? we become more aware of the subconscious. We're kind of allowing the bridge between the conscious and subconscious mind to be built and established. And for some people who haven't had severe traumatic backgrounds or don't have any major intense forces working against them or in their lives as they're growing up, it may be okay. But for those of us who've had severe trauma, it could potentially be harmful, because once we open that gate and those reactive forces come forth, like it did in my life. In fact, I am a living testimony to the research I've been recently reading only this year. But the violence and the rage that was in my body, that was living through me, that wanted to control me, I literally took a knife to my neck and almost cut my throat. I would beat myself severely because I had been in so many fights. I was initiated into gangs. I had suffered abuse under, different people in my life. And, that violence was like embedded into my subconscious mind. And it began to surface through meditation. And I'm just lucky that I survived it, right? Like I was on my own a lot. And again, I acted violently to myself. I would bang my head on the ground. Like it was crazy looking back. You would have thought I was totally psychotic. I'm just very fortunate that nobody was there to diagnose me or medicate me or whatever. And I was allowed to kind of find my way through it, and I survived it all. But maybe it could have gone differently, but I did survive. And it's very crude, and I don't recommend meditation really. What I do is inner coaching is, it's a very specialized and designed approach to transforming what's been there in the subconscious, what has been lurking, what has been controlling and dominating your life, your perspectives, why you are the way you are, how you wound up being. And so it's a combination of things I've learned and experienced through meditation, plus all kinds of trauma therapy, plus hypnotherapy, plus transformational training, plus just my own intuitive years of practicing and being such a creator inventor type, testing different things out, breath work and all kinds of things. And what I formulated was a system of addressing the subconscious content first, creating a sense of deep and profound safety and realization of one's true nature, which is that essentially, apart from the mind body, you are awareness. Awareness is the nature of being itself. It's the most fundamental component of consciousness. And when you experience yourself as awareness and you are relaxed and the nervous system is regulated, which is some of what we do to help a client feel calm and at ease, from there, we can then start to welcome into view what was going on. And this is a very different approach than traditional therapeutic models. And I'm not a licensed therapist. I developed this on my own out of sheer necessity for myself, my own life, and then working with so many people over the years, because that's been my passion. And as a coach, it's just, this is the realm I work in. And I've been asked to train therapists in various recovery centers, which is where I worked a lot, leading groups and individuals. And, that's a really tough ground to test all this stuff in, because they're not doing so hot, in life. So they got a lot going on. And there's a tremendous amount of trauma there, which I'm familiar with. So this stuff really just became so potent and so powerful, where people were able to safely bring the past pains into the central axis of peace that we had already established, and work with it from that space. In other words, they don't get all caught up in the emotion like typical shadow work and therapeutic work that I've also participated in and also led and taught in my group in the past. And I kept asking myself, like, how could this be more efficient, less uncomfortable, less painful, less re-traumatizing? Because it could be traumatizing to revisit your past pain if it's not done correctly, and be emotionally charged and chaotic. And it can just open up floodgates of other painful memories. And so there's just a way of going about it. I train people on how to safely navigate the subconscious territory with extreme precision, because most people just don't know what they're made of, how they work, how the mind works, how the body works. But there's a very clear, scientifically validatable method to explore this and understand how you function, which you get to prove to yourself. I can explain some of those basics to you, but what's great about this is that you don't have to believe anything that I'm telling you. You can just participate in this as an experiment, and you'll see for yourself what's actually going on. When I ask you to take a look at these dimensions that we look at, which are thought, the realm of mind, right? Your concepts, your mental perspectives, right? The different images that are there, the conclusions that you formed, different values that are based on analytical conclusions, right? You can see thoughts. And then when I ask you to take a look at emotions, you can see emotions are very different frequency of our experience of consciousness, right? And then we look at the somatics, which is the feelings and sensations of the body, pressure in the chest, tingling in the hands and feet, or butterflies in the stomach, or tightness in my throat, or aches in my head. And there's various somatics that will show up, and we can look at those. And then there's effort impulses. That's applied force. As a spiritual being, if you want to use that term, and I don't like the word spiritual because there's so many definitions for that. What I would say is, a spiritual being, you're actually causation and awareness. That's what spiritual being to me means. You're able to be aware of the effects you cause in this physical universe. First effects you cause is in thought, then emotion, feeling, sensations in the body, efforts, actions through the body, results in the world. And like there's a sequence to manifestation or creation or how things unfold through a human experience. And most people, once I explain this, they can see this in their lives. But when we do this inner coaching, you can start to reflect on your history. You can look at what you're experiencing right now. You become attuned to these different realms in a much more intimate way. And what happens is you start to gain mastery over how you operate in your life. Instead of being compulsively driven, you're free now to address and face those things, which is what happened to me through hours and hours of meditation. But we're talking, it took me years to get to the place that I get people in a matter of literally only minutes. People get to where I got in years in minutes. So I feel very proud of that. And it's something I've been looking into. I'm a systems guy, an optimization kind of guy. It's always, ever since I was a little kid, I just want things better, faster, more efficient,
Yeah. This sounds so fascinating. I think I won't take all of the listeners, viewers' time, but me and my sister, we wrote a book, which was her journey through addiction and getting clean, and how I processed it when she told me about it for the first time, because I left when she got deep in her addiction. So I wasn't there when all of most of it happened. I mean, I was there when she was addicted, but she was still functioning and she still had our kids. So one of the things that we're doing is we're redoing the book, and we want to go into counseling centers and we want to talk to them from a family member standpoint and from the addict standpoint. So I would love to talk to you offline sometime and talk about some of these techniques and some things that would possibly help us later on down the road. And but anyways,
that's beautiful.
That's going to be offline. But I do want to talk before we head out for the night. You said that you have a book coming up that you will be bringing out into the world. You want to talk a little bit about that, or is it something that you're still developing and you're not ready to let everyone know yet?
Yeah. So the book is really, it's going to be more of like I'm not really into books so much as like as a transformational modality. Like they're interesting, that can be helpful, but in this line of work, it's the experience and being with human beings is what matters. The book is really there to kind of help people analytically get clear about the value of what's going on and hopefully lead them to the work, because it's until they get into the groups themselves and start to realize like these experiences in an experiential way, it's really not going to make much of a difference. It'll be inspiring, it might be enlightening, but this is work we can't do on our own. Even me, I'm highly trained. I'm extremely good at what I do, extremely. But when it comes to my own challenges, I have my team coach me. When my mother died and I was in extreme grief and there was feelings of guilt that surfaced that I wasn't even ready for or aware of, I had my team process me and support me through it, because they're just things we cannot access on our own. We shut them out so severely and we have habitually blocked them that even if and I'm intentional, I'm a real persistent kind of guy, and I can't even break into my own subconscious stuff if I want to. It just doesn't work. And there's a reason, there's science behind why this doesn't happen. But the book itself, The Core Encounter, is going to share what our three parts of the program are. The core connection, which is our foundation. It's about establishing connection with yourself. Like I said, most of us have a tremendous amount of content that has been denied. It is suppressed. It is unwanted. We learned that there are parts of ourselves that are unacceptable, that are not valued, and that's just what we learn. That's how we're conditioned. And then we react from that. We compensate for that. We strategize in ways to get along in life, to fit in, to get approval. And then we're robotically living this out most of our lives and not knowing it. And so people get shocked when they realize that the way they live their life today is totally like machine-like. They're not actually free. They're not truly present. They're looking for something ahead, or they're running away from something behind. They're not really in the here and now, and they don't even know it. They're all caught up in religious ideas or success ideas, and like they're completely not experiencing the fact that, like someone, this Jesus said, like the kingdom of heaven is within you. It is among you. It is now. Those words were meant to be like, it's here. And we got people looking off, whether you're religious or not, we're looking off to something else. And it's like, they're not really experiencing what I know is so beautiful and so rich, is that we're it. You know, I was talking with someone a couple of days ago, prospecting call, and she was asking me, well, what's the point? And I was like, this is the point.
Yeah.
This is the point. Just look how you need it to be something other than now. That's just the indicator that I'm not satisfied and I can't appreciate what's in front of me and who I am. And that's most people's condition. The core encounter, the book will explain this and reveal this, but the core encounter begins with right here, right now. Everything you were looking for is already here. And the better news than that is that you're it. So that's where the core encounter begins, is with a revelation of that. And a revelation is an unveiling, a seeing, right? It's a discovery, right? This is already so. You don't need to make this so. Self-development and personal development work has a lot to do with becoming something else, becoming more, better, different, you know, the things that we think are going to improve our lives. And it's like, that's important from one angle of conversation. But in my work, we're leading people to realize that, well, there really is nowhere to get to, and there's nothing more to be. You already essentially are that. And so that sounds really good, but what's even better is when you experience it, and it can be. And through our work, inner coaching, that becomes something that most people experience within minutes, not weeks of work, but within minutes. That's like they get a taste of that. And then in the weeks of work that we do, it becomes more profound. So the book continues with, you know, core communication, which is a whole nother realm. People don't understand and distinguish between how they listen and how they speak and how those create their reality. Most of us understand that the things we say have some impact and some effect, but most of us don't realize that listening is actually a part of the way we create and experience our reality. We create people through the way we listen. And our listening is pretty much a structure of past information and conclusions and data that we are trying to filter the present moment data through. And so we're trying to fit what's coming from the world into something we already know. So in other words, there's a very limited possibility of interpretation. There's not much room for new things. Our listening is very constrained. And so we work on breaking that listening up, exposing it for what it is, having people see how they listen to their husband or their wife or their children actually is a very just fixed and rigid way of viewing them. And that traps people in your life to be a certain way. It doesn't allow them to be anything more. And we think people are being a certain way because that's how they are, not that that's how we're creating them. And so core communication starts to open up this world a little bit more. And there's so much more to it. And then core creation is about why you're not achieving what's important to you, because you probably don't even really know what that is. If you're not even authentically connected and attuned to the self that is essentially you, you're operating in all kinds of inauthentic ideals, points of view. You're trying to escape some kind of pain, get people's approval. So the goals that you have are completely misaligned with a self that would be full of love for its own existence and, you know, complete in its own nature. We're actually operating from a perceived self that's like not enough, not good enough, never will be enough. And somehow we got to make that happen. And so trying to create from that is very painful. And if we do succeed in achieving things, we're not satisfied. So core creation deals with all of those elements and helps people. Again, it's all internal. So the book is going to explain all of this more in detail. It's going to give everything pretty much that I share in the programs. But really, I don't mind giving all that away, because again, the real work comes from participating with other human beings like me and experiencing it inwardly through that dynamic. So,
yeah, you know, the one thing I've realized is I could read a book, and I read books ferociously. I have my Kindle on my computer here. I've got the other one here. And then I have right underneath it, I have another book. So I'm constantly reading different books and different modalities and all this other stuff, right? But it's totally different if I sit and I talk to an individual about it. The way
yes,
I ingest my information, the way that my brain takes it all in, the way that I think about it is different when I
yes,
talk to an individual about it. So you're absolutely right. you can read about it in a book, but to experience it firsthand is going to be totally different. And I just want to know when the Netflix documentary about it is going to come out, because holy moly cannoli, I felt like I was sitting through The Secret all over again. Like you've seen The Secret, right?
Oh
On
yeah.
Netflix.
Oh,
Oh my God.
definitely.
It's like transformational, right?
Yeah. I saw it
And
many
I've
years
read the
ago,
book.
actually.
And then I'm sitting here listening to yours, and I mean, I don't know if people saw me with my mouth open. I was like, "Oh my God, close your mouth, Chris! Close your mouth, CJ!" Because it that get like, wow, yeah, good stuff.
It's
So
it's it's true, and I love reading. But I have 4 bookshelves in my room that you can't see, and then I have cubes. I have these cubes of boxes I still haven't unpacked since I came to Atlanta, of books, and I love reading. But I'm an implementer, and
yep.
it's and I really uh, when it comes to self-realization, the ultimate mirror is another human being, and especially one who has a degree of self-realization. Why many therapists fail to produce real value for their clients is because they're trapped in the realm of mind body. They might be sophisticated mind body systems, but they have not yet transcended those confines of the mind body. They overly identify with that. And in order to really set clients free, we got to go beyond the limits of the mind body. And if you've never experienced this for yourself, I mean, you can't take people any further than you've gone yourself. And if you haven't done the work, that's the other thing. If you're a trauma therapist, you better have had some trauma and know what it's like to work through some of that. You know what I mean? Because you can get an intellectual school learned, education, but trying to apply that to real human beings. I mean, I worked in recovery centers, as I mentioned, and they have licensed therapists galore. And one of the key complaints was like I just don't feel like related to them. Like I don't feel like they're connected with me, and there's like this distance, or like they're better than me, and I'm some bad person, or something's wrong with me, or I don't want to be diagnosed or told that I have this thing or that thing. And just the general way that traditional therapy goes is just it's 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 it supports the pharmaceutical industry,
Yep.
right? It supports the insurance billing, because you have to have a diagnosis to be able to get money from it. Like the structures are perverted. I mean, it's really distorted. It's a shame, and it's really good drug dealing. I'm look back and I'm like, wow, I was just a petty, uh, black market criminal, and I'm like, these guys are geniuses. They invented drug dealing in the
Legally.
most beautiful way that it could be done. Not beautiful, but like the most successful way possible, like the illegal. And
Yeah.
it's disgusting to me. And
Yep.
because I get transformations with people every single day
Mhm.
without medication. I help people get to the source of what's going on and clear that and get their lives working, whether it's anxiety, depression, trauma, it doesn't matter. And we don't need to label and diagnose. People are not stuck in any of this. So that's what's so beautiful. It's like they get to be free from the confines and limits of the mind. And I'm just very fortunate to have suffered so deeply, because it makes me care about people so much. Uh, it, it, I just, I grew out of that. And also to have lived the life I lived. I hurt people. I robbed people at gunpoint. I pushed drugs. I set up drug dealers. I was spreading drugs out in the world. And when it finally collapsed, I really understood what I was doing. Like it all did come full circle.
Mhm.
And I was just disgusted with that. And I'm glad I felt all that pain, because that drove me to say, oh man, I never want to be like this again. I want to do the opposite of this. I want to empower people. I want to set people free. I'm sorry that I did what I did. And I was like, help.
Yeah.
I'll do anything. And it just led me to be where I am. So it hurt a lot, but I'm grateful. People matter, and we can heal, we can transform, we can heal and overcome every mental, emotional disorder. I've I've been able to do it all in myself, and I help clients do it regularly. So I'm really not happy with some of the ways that people are teaching things, and there's ways that people are going about trying to heal. It just doesn't work. It gets worse. I mean, I got tons of friends and family members who've died from pharmaceuticals, legally prescribed. They're not drug addicts. They became drug addicts
Yeah.
unwittingly and overdosed in their sleep, mixed with alcohol or whatever, fell asleep behind the wheel. There's all kinds of things. I could tell you story after story of people I know personally that are not here today, and they were not street drug addicts.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
agree with
sad.
you. I agree with you 100%. I mean, I started studying psychology when I went to college in the military, because I wanted to understand my own brain. I didn't know why I
Mm,
was inside my brain feeling the way I always felt. I was like, here I am leading a good life, but I constantly felt sad. I
mm,
constantly felt like everyone hated me. I constantly felt this, I know now, anxiety. I didn't have a name for it back then, but I was always just constantly just on edge and having panic attacks. I didn't know what was, so I started studying psychology basically to understand myself, because when you're in the military, you don't go ask for help or you're gone. And it was the only way that
Mm,
I could, keep my kids away from the life that I grew up. So,
wow.
and then I went, while going through my degree, I said, okay, well, I want to help other people because there's so many people that suffer, and I want to be able to help them in a way that I could never help myself or other people when I was growing up.
Mm,
But then before I graduated with my degree, I said, I can't help other people. This will consume me, because my grandma always told me, you always leave the light on in case somebody needs help outside. If somebody's outside in the cold, you make sure you give them a blanket, or you bring them in and give them a good meal.
mm,
You never tell anyone no. And I thought, I'm that person who, if somebody needs help and I'm their therapist, I'm literally going to be consumed until I can do everything possible. I'm going to be a horrible therapist. So I commend people like yourself who can do that for other people and still be able to maintain that balance, because I couldn't do it, because I love that field. I love people that can help other people overcome without saying, here's a pill, go call me in the morning, those type of things. So thank you for what you do,
mm.
Prince.
Thank you for that.
I want to ask, how do people reach out to you to learn how to work on that inner core?
Yeah, innercoachingacademy.com. And I actually have a really pretty valuable free training on there that in itself, if you just go over that a few times, like there's 5 days of training, and each day we'll give some basic instructions with a guided process. Those guided processes are very powerful. It's something I would do with people. They cover some more general issues, obviously not super personalized, but I've worked with enough people that the general issues that I work with cover a lot of people's stuff. And those processes train you on how to be with yourself. So I highly recommend checking that out and just getting that for free. And if you wanted to work with me, all the options to work with me come from there. You'll get emails for each day, and there's ways you can get in contact with me, have a conversation. We're about to roll out the Core Encounter groups in 2022. That's where the real work happens. So we've got 3 programs: Core Connection with Self, 6 weeks. And then we have Core Communication and Core Creation. That's where the real magic is for those who are interested. It's a conversation. I do one-to-one coaching too, but the group work is where I always really want people to go, because many more miracles happen there. So much more comes up, and there's so much more support, and it's beautiful. But I really appreciate your journey as well and what you're sharing. And I would love to give you a demo experience whenever you have some time at any point. So it'd be great to share that with you.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your truth with everybody here. The work that you do for so many people. Like I said, me and my sister will be redoing her book and going into some counseling centers and talking about the journey between the family and the addict and things, to help out. And would love your input on some things that we could do to make sure that we're doing it effectively.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Guys, don't forget, come back each week and watch us here live or on the podcast. Right here on Facebook, you can also ask Siri or Alexa to play our latest episode. Head to our website, catch our latest issue of the magazine or the blog post. We want to continue making authors' dreams come true and provide them a platform to shine. We'll see you guys next week. If you appreciate conversations like we do and want to become a better speaker, visit our friends Brendan and Vamsi of Master Talk, where they teach you the power of effective communication. And don't forget, if you want to stay awake with a nice cup of coffee, get your coffee from Third Day Coffee Seguin, the best cup of coffee on this side of heaven. Until next time, my friends, I'm CJ. That's Vince. Go visit his website and read his book, and look out for the new one coming up, and do the work, guys. You got to do the work. And we will see you guys next time. See you later, Vince.
Thanks,
Bye,
CJ.
everybody.
Thanks for being
The Author's Porch is a certified veteran-hosted podcast. Show your support. Tune in, share, and subscribe.